Fine. There you go. I love that lady. Thank you and welcome everyone to the Editor and Publisher Magazine's ongoing series of what we like to call our sponsored webinars. If you don't know who I am, I'm Mike Blinder. I am publisher of E&P Magazine. Quick housekeeping, if I may. You're on a platform you may never have heard of called Zoom. Just kidding. You're actually on Zoom Webinar. Many of you use Zoom today for your daily business tasks. It's an amazingly cool platform. We use it here at E&P along with others. But webinar is different than Zoom meeting, which means I have control over you. We have over 75 registered for today's webinar. If I were to allow you to use your audio, we would have like a kegger going on. So here's what we're going to do today. We're going to live in the chat room. And again, let me say that there's a couple of things below your screen. Ignore the raise your hand and ignore the Q&A and simply chat. And the one thing I want you to do during this entire hour we're going to spend together is use it to whatever advantage you want. If you disagree with something that you hear, say it. If you want more information or you want to augment the content, please. We and a bunch of others will keep our eyes in there and try to respond to you. And so we can keep the chat room lively for the next hour. One of the things Zooms does, which I don't understand, is they default the chat room to panelists only. That means if you just leave it there, the only people who are going to see your comments is the panel. I'd like to keep it open to everyone and make it for panelists and attendees as well. So that's our goal today, to have you in our chat room joining us for our illustrious panel. And I'd like to bring them in now, if I may. First of all, I'd like to thank our two sponsors for today, which are PandaLogic. And that, of course, is you, Terry. Terry, we are honored. Thank you so much for being sponsoring this broadcast today. And Terry, you'd like to bring in, I believe, a close friend of yours and a compatriot, which would be, correct me if I'm wrong, Sean King, and do a little bit of a background on what's going on with your company. Am I correct, sir? And what your partnership's all about?
Sure. Some of you might recognize PandaLogic, formerly Real Match. We've been in the publishing, job advertising market for 13 years. So it's great to be here with E&P today. Last September, we merged with a company called Veritone. Veritone is the first AI OS platform provider in the marketplace. And so we're excited to be here today to share with you how AI is being used by publishers, both in terms of recruitment, marketing, but also in some very unique categories in podcasting. And that's where Sean comes today to represent Veritone One and our ability to bring AI to publishers through podcasts.
Sean, how would you like to augment? Did Terry pretty much give us the elevator pitch, or do you have a little bit more you'd like to add to that, sir?
Well, Terry's been with us for a few months now, so he's getting the elevator pitch down pretty darn well. Good. So I got to give him credit for that. But really what we really focus on is helping just empower organizations in kind of digital transformation, taking what they have and leveraging AI to be able to create new opportunities. And obviously then to be able to service set opportunities. And I think that's where the marriage between Veritone and PandaLogic really is going to bear a lot of fruit, creating opportunities and then helping staff those opportunities that are necessary.
I think that's amazing. And, we obviously had a get together before doing this live broadcast. And some of the technology you guys are doing here is scaring the heck out of me, because you are actually getting to a world where I just read an interesting article about how the Miami newspaper is using AI to actually help build an entire vertical on real estate. And one of their competing newspapers didn't like the fact that one of their reporters contributing was called bot. In other words, they caught the fact that AI was actually contributing to the vertical, but that's very common in today's world, right? That content is now being gathered in a very efficient manner. Am I saying that correctly?
You are saying that correctly. I mean, it's the ability to be able to empower searchability, discoverability within content. And I applaud the fact that they're just calling it out there as bot, because, they're showing that ability and being at the forefront of not wanting to kind of trick the consumer or the reader and just acknowledging exactly what it is. I think that's I give a high marks for going about that route.
See, I think that there's some kind of, there's a lot of snarkiness going on in conversations about this. I was doing my homework this morning, where some people are scared about this technology, thinking it's stealing jobs. Let's just, before we get into the meat of the case study, Terry, that's not the case here, right? You're just making media companies more efficient. There still needs to be an editor or someone who's watching the process, but AI makes it much more efficient for content gathering. Am I saying that right, sir?
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about automation. And if you can automate the manual tasks that typically take time or just can't scale to the extent that's necessary in the market today, then you put time back in people's day to do more valuable kinds of exercises. And when we talk about talent acquisition and recruiting, being able to take an employer's jobs, figure out what's the right place, right time, right cost to distribute those jobs and drive traffic, it eliminates all of the manual effort that people used to have to go through in order to drive qualified applicants for employers.
There you go. So let's get into the case study if we can. And the case study today is interesting because it's about us. George, you and I go way back. I mean, to the dark ages. My background is, not to bore anyone, but I was running a radio group in New England. But George, you were familiar with them. It was the same company that owned Wish and down in Boston. And I was working for their Portland affiliate. Then I moved over to WBLM, which was owned by Bob Fuller in New England. So I was New England based, and the Portland Press Herald hired me away from this radio group and said, help us start our internet division in 1998. We're talking the real beginning of it all. So I'm working for a company that doesn't exist anymore, GeigerNet Communications, as one of the founders. And we built one of the first websites. When I was doing that, Lisa DeSisto, who is now running the Portland Press Herald, was doing it for Boston.com. She was my counterpart there. And George, you were part of like our fledgling group. You were down on Cape Cod, right? That's how you and I first started to interact.
Cape Cod Times. I was running Cape Cod Online.
And you actually became head of digital for which company was it? Was it JR? I can't remember.
Ottaway Newspapers. I got promoted in '99 to corporate internet director for the group.
So it was all like back in the dark. Guys, we're talking way before Craigslist, way before Google. We were like the Wild West. We were making up the ad sizes in those days. Remember that? I mean, we were just trying to figure this whole thing out. And those were the days of the portals. I mean, we thought the internet in those days was going to be, we would be the starting place. Do you remember, George, in Boston, the billboard that they had up there was during the big dig? It said Boston.com, the only site not under construction in Boston. Do you remember that one? Yeah. And we're going way back. But you and I regrouped at the New England, what was it? The New England Newspaper Association annual conference, right?
Yeah, NENPA, the New England Newspaper Conference is the actual name of it. And that was just a great opportunity to reconnect with you and find out everything that was happening with E&P, which ultimately led to this.
Well, I've always known that you moved from the digital space in these companies into verticals. I mean, you were the guy reaching out to me for years. I was doing consulting because I would always turn to you and ask questions about jobs, homes, and cars. Right. And you got very involved. You ended up working for some of the big players, right? When you left Ottaway. I just mentioned to you, the history of E&P, if I can be so bold. When I did my due diligence on E&P, this was the E&P of the past. I now down here, and I'm going to, E&P is the case study right now because we're using PandaLogic, and now we're going to also be working with Veritone and all that and more. E&P is a 140-year-old brand. But when I was doing my due diligence on this product, because I've only had this puppy for 2 years, you got to understand that in the dark ages, back in the 90s and 80s and 70s, and I have every copy of E&P since 1884 in a climate-controlled storage shed down here in Portland. I have all of them. There was almost 20, 30 pages of recruitment ads. Do you remember those days, George? This was
a place. That was the place for industry people to go.
I mean, we actually, if you look at them, they had a map with zones where you had, and there was a team of almost 30 in New York handling just recruitment. It wasn't the display advertising that was driving E&P's revenue back in the print-only days. It was this vertical. And when Nielsen was going to shut it down, they shut that all down. Remember, E&P was picked up. A really good friend of mine out in California picked it up. He basically saved it when Nielsen was shutting this down in Media Week. You remember that happened about 12 years ago. And the vertical died just over time. There was not a lot of love being given. So when I picked it up, there was, George, what did it look like? It had what? Just
5 ads.
Yeah. And it was no revenue, none. And it frustrated me because on the television side, there are a lot of big players, right, George, that have built like these verticals for jobs within the industry. But in our industry, it all went into little silos, like associations, like every association had their own little job board, right? And then you had Poynter had their job board. But these boards, correct me if I'm wrong, this is going to bring in Terry in a moment, were very proprietary. The ads simply lived in that one location, right, George? And I was...
So the old school model was, we've got an audience, we're going to have a vertical to place the jobs so that they're visible in our space and people will come. And that's the old model that no longer holds true. I mean, there's a place for the display of the ads on the site, but the real action happens. And the phrase that we would use is the internet as the job board, because that is where we are basically pulling an audience from, the whole internet, and we're using technology to get there. So that's the big change, where we were in an old school environment. We met, we pivoted to the vertical solution, and the genesis for Media Job Board was there in our conversation in Boston. And then it was really about getting the technology, and I knew I needed to go to.
Well, let me ask Terry this, because Terry, I'm watching all your faces. Not our audience may be just watching one face at a time. Terry, you've been nodding your heads through this. Correct me if I'm wrong. As this industry stayed in neutral, thinking I'm just going to have my own vertical, my own environment for jobs, the recruiters didn't think that way. They were using launch pads. That was the term I remember. They would go to one place and place an ad, and that ad would be pushed to other locations. Correct? Because the industry grew up around, and we weren't meeting the needs. Am I saying that right, Terry?
Yeah, we call it programmatic job advertising, which is where AI comes in, which is taking an employer's job, looking at the criteria for finding that qualified applicant and distributing that job to all of the sites that might have qualified traffic for those applicants, and making sure those jobs get in front of the people that are actually searching and looking for jobs, active and passive. So that's where we come in and distribute those jobs automatically across the internet, both to publisher sites as well as our own aggregate network. So
we worked with you and launched a new job board, and I decided that, and then here comes this pandemic, right? I mean, I made the best decision of my life. I decided to, pick up E&P 3 months before COVID. But I figured an alliance might be proper. So George and I met first, and he suggested PandoLogic, right, George? You're the one that brought Pando into the play.
Yeah. Yep.
And then I told you, let's build it bigger. And I went off and talked to, at the time, there was SNPA, Suburban Southern Newspaper Publishers, and Inland Press were merging into what is today's America's Newspapers. And then I went over and saw my friends at Poynter, had lunch with them and explained. And they had a similar problem. They realized they hadn't grown up for the recruitment space. Their jobs were living only on the Poynter site. And there was no, I was calling it what, backfill, and you call it what?
Inventory. So we make sure that we have a good user experience. So it's not just paid ads that are coming in from our system, but we're also able to leverage our relationship with PandoLogic's network, the job network, and that makes all the difference in the world. So we're assuring our users that they're going to have a good experience as a candidate coming in and seeing plenty of jobs in the media industry.
So there's two sides to the equation, and you trained me on this. We have to first serve the job seeker. And at that time, there were a lot of them, because we got to remember pre-COVID, no offense, and I don't want to get into a whole other topic, but the big Goliaths were laying off news staff left and right, and salespeople. There wasn't a lot of demand for jobs. Here comes COVID, no one's hiring. So you had a massive amount of people that were underemployed or out of employment for a time. We had to please them by giving them an environment where it wasn't just our jobs. Our jobs, correct me if I'm wrong, George, and you're managing this thing, puts those that are placed through Poynter, E&P, or America's Newspapers first. But then there's that inventory under it, in case we're not serving the need. Pando, where do you get that inventory, Terry? Where is that all coming from? That's the AI, right? You're bringing it in.
We source that inventory, across the internet. In pre-pandemic, we had something like 12 million jobs. Post-pandemic, we had something like 7 million jobs. And so we pull all those jobs and then we curate them based upon the audience, right? So in your case, these are media-related jobs that get curated on your site.
I was fascinated by it because when George told me to, remember, Media Job Board didn't go live for a while, George. You and I were doing tests on it. Do you remember? We were like I'm going to bring it up on the screen if I may live, but you and I were kicking tires in this thing for a while. But if I put in right here, now I'm looking for a job, and I look at it automatically now, knows what kind of jobs this platform, Media Jobs, and like I want to be a sales account executive, and up comes instantly, and I could put in my own zip code. Let's do that just for grins and giggles, because I'm assuming I'm having lunch with the publisher later this week of my own local paper. But here it goes. Account executive in Lutz, Florida. That quadrant job, George, didn't come from us, right?
That's right. That is inventory. Yep.
Right. Because we don't have anyone in Lutz, Florida right now advertising. But
Right.
so it means I'm serving the job seeker. Now, in today's world, there are less job seekers. I mean, things have shifted now. Now there's a demand for talent. Do I have that right, Terry? And there's a major demand for talent.
There's a major demand, and we're seeing publishers are actually, getting an uptake in recruitment because employers are scouring every conceivable source of traffic. And the beauty about what you're offering on the Media Job Board is the job gets posted on your local site, but then we programmatically, using AI, target the right audience. It might go to Craigslist, might go to ZipRecruiter, might go to Indeed. We blanket the job network and the internet with that job listing.
So this is what freaks me out. I was nervous about this. George, you kept giving me ether and telling me to go have a cocktail because George kept saying the word might to me. And I'm so used to making a sale, having it be finite. Tell the person exactly where this ad's going to be placed. And George said, the world doesn't work that way anymore, Mike. Take a breath. You got to let the programmatic, I guess, AI do its job, right, in the background. Am I saying that correctly?
Yeah, and I think it's important. I had a background with a job tool that you would basically manually position the networks you wanted to go out to. And the reality is that machine learning and AI does that so much better. It just simply does not make sense to not do that. That
Right.
is of the future, and that's why we are engaged with programmatic.
And I was nervous because I didn't think that the employers would understand that, but they do. They trust this AI. In other words, they don't hold you. Okay, so here's how it goes. If you post the job at, look, I'm not making sales here today, although I like making money. I'm not a communist. If you post a job at 149, you're getting the job into the system. But if you take it up to the 199 level, that's where all the AI kicks in. Am I right, George? That's where
Total talent reach, and that is the optimum placement to ensure that your job posting is reaching probable candidates that have been identified by the matching engine and the system. And those candidate names flow into the employer's account. So it's a very robust tool in terms of actually finding people and matching probable candidates to the job that's been.
And obviously, I don't want to go deep. Then if I'm an employer, I can log in, see who's ever applied for it. But now, Terry, you're also you got thousands of resumes in there. So I can also get matched to resumes that are being posted for free, right? George, we don't charge someone to post a resume.
Right. The resume is something that people can add as a candidate as part of their profile.
Right. And we do that for free because I told you I didn't want to charge
Right.
people looking for work. I only wanted to, no, don't be offended, the people who were hiring. I could have charged for that, right, Terry, if I wanted to?
Sure.
But why are you laughing at me? Sorry,
That's the right choice in today's market, for sure.
Right. I let everybody post their resumes, but it was funny. I have a couple clients, media companies I'm now working with. We hired a senior sales executive, George, over at that media company through this board. And that was over at Hometown Media News Group down here in Florida, right? You were managing that campaign for them, and they found that candidate. Now that candidate was working at another media company. So how did that's interesting as well. We're going to get into Sean in a moment. Sean, I can't wait to get into your stuff. I'm just staying basic here. But you said these words, Terry, active and passive job seeker, right? Now that to me is an amazing thing in today's world, because when you got a guy underemployed, and again, which is very common in our industry today, right? Someone who does not like their job because they're not happy with their environment, they may not be actively looking. Do I have that right, Terry? They may not be on the job board, right?
There's, if you look at the labor participation rate, that's a big problem in our industry right now. A lot of people on the sidelines just not looking for jobs.
So E&P is read by over 40,000. I mean, you can say we have 85,000 unique visitors, but I've increased our tools now. I actually have a company we work with that's tagged every page. So we got rid of the bots. We have 42,000 last month, people who claim that they are executive decision makers, C-suite, and that's what we wanted. I'm very comfortable with our digital audience. George, you forced me to put on this page, on the homepage of our website, this widget, which is coming from PandaLogic, correct? This is how we get the passive job seeker. Do I have that right, George?
Yep. Grab attention with the logo so we know that the job board is part of the site, but actually show actionable links with jobs that are showing up via an RSS feed powered widget that clicks then through to that jobs landing page.
So if I go to this now, here's the Post and Courier. We all know PJ, love her. I mean, we made her our publisher of the year, I think it was 2 years ago or 1 year ago. And she has posted into this system, this job opening, which we have I use the term, Terry, I made this word up, you can't play it in Scrabble, externalized. Do you see what I'm saying? I pulled it out of the vertical and put it in front of people's faces. George, you then worked with a company that's near and dear to me because I've known them. They're also New England based, called Friends to Follow. And you built a widget. How does this work, George?
Correct. So what we wanted to do is also have the ability to showcase the logo of the people, the logo of the companies that are placing jobs. And one of the requests from a partner was, we love seeing the job title and where it's at. We'd love to see the companies in the browse environment. So I created this, and there's also a browse page at editorandpublisher.com/featured jobs. And that allows people to just browse through and see all of the jobs that have been posted and then scroll back in chronological order. So the most recent jobs are right at the top, and then you can go back and see. And we've had really good feedback on being able to see the logos of the companies in addition to just the job title.
So this is important to those that are on this webinar today, because you are media companies. And in today's world, this is just like a realtor. You don't go to a realtor today and sell them the vertical. You don't go to a realtor in today's world and say, hey, I'll help you sell a home. They'll laugh you out of the office. They don't have any inventory, right? They want a listing. You're selling them branding today. List with me. I'll sell your home quick and above ask. In today's world where nobody can find talent, Terry, I don't know what happened, but in today's world, millions of people left the job force. And that's it. We have a very low unemployment rate right now. So we shifted from this buyer-seller market thing. The fact that you're able to externalize the job is even an additional benefit. This goes beyond the vertical, right? The actual job board. Terry, is this difficult for George, or does this just come from a simple RSS feed? How hard is it to pull out specific jobs in specific categories and display them?
Yeah, there's a taxonomy that makes it very easy. In terms of job type, vertical market type, sponsor type. George has done a great job. And the thing I love about this is the ability for him to utilize other sources, other publishers that can take this content and distribute it and promote it as well. So it just gives an aggregate approach to the marketplace.
So I'm all about numbers. I mean, I'm a nerd. I read every single report I can. We've tagged all our pages with a company called Bombora now, so I can actually look at our audience and analyze who's clicking what and why. This is today's newsletter. It's not live yet. We do 2 newsletters a day, George. You know this. 7 a.m. is exclusive E&P content. 12 noon, I put together a deal with America's newspapers. We share the curation of every piece of industry news in the world. We try to give every decision maker at 12 noon Eastern time a look at the world quickly with links. It's curated news. And I'm approving it, my wife is, because it's 12:30, so it already went out, excuse me. So here's today's newsletter. I noticed, George, when you embedded in this newsletter, here's the stories we've curated for everybody today. They're, of course, advertising, sponsored content, mega conference. George, this is now the news people that's really hot. That's why I put it lower. Do you see? I'm not an idiot. I put the news people love, the pictures of all the people moving around. So I moved it down below the headlines. George, the number 1 clicks on this newsletter are your job listings.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. I use a tool called Cloud Engage, and when this newsletter hits, I can look at a map of the U.S. and see it light up, and track people that are going to click through to job listings, and so it's a direct grab of attention when this email hits, and that's pretty impressive.
Now, again, media companies, please get into the chat room if you want more information. What I'm saying to a media company today is you're in a special place for a local market. If you've got a local employer who needs talent now, don't give up on the job vertical, just exploit it more by saying, I've got audience. I've got people that are online reading my content that may feel like it's time to move to a better job or a different job. You see where I'm going with this? This same thing can apply to any media company. And Terry, anybody can do this, right? In their newsletters, on their websites, in their social media. We're posting on all our social media channels jobs, right? Okay, now so let's bring in Tara. Tara, you were with the New England News Publishers Association, Tara, am I right? Or
yes, I'm the social media marketing manager of the New England Newspaper and Press Association. So similarly to the E&P story, we had a very traditional job board, literally very basic, just update jobs on a web page in a big list. I'll drop a link to that in a few moments, but we were able to, and it was always a member benefit,
right?
Meaning we let our members, as part of their membership, just post jobs to that for free. It was pretty simple arrangement. We do have a price for a paid listing, but frankly, that's very rare that someone would pay just us in today's world, as already mentioned, to just put a job on our one website. Having said that, job list, that page is one of the most trafficked pages on our website in general. And when we do our monthly email e-bulletin, our once a month product, it's also that job listing link is one of the most highly clicked things on the email. So I've also known George for many years, and Mike as well, more not, but he did speak at our event a few years ago. So I got to know him a little bit more, but I'm also familiar with the history of editor and publisher and how the jobs used to be and how it was always the place where you would go, especially to get a mid to senior level management job. I actually have gotten jobs through E&P listings, believe it or not, several times, like in my career when I was more working directly for newspapers. So George came to me with the idea that we could come up with something to extend the reach for our members of the jobs. And so we made an arrangement, and we fully support the work that Media Job Board, editor and publisher, Poynter, and America's Newspapers are doing, because this platform was really built from within the industry. Meaning, there may be other job boards out there for media, but this one really is a culmination of the players, let's say, and I think will grow over time to become the dominant.
Well, yeah, again, and I want to talk to our audience now, because George, the same deal that you're cutting with she said the word reach, right? I'm the one screaming every time I train an advertiser on how media works. I say it's two things: reach and frequency. I mean, nothing changes. It's always reach and frequency, right? I mean, Terry, you might think I'm too basic. I always say in the 1600s to sell a cow, you nail a note to a tree. Nothing changes, just notes and trees, right? I mean, I'm going to put the note on the right path where the cow buyers are, and I'm going to put more than one. George is living that in his brain. So he reaches out to me, go, more reach, better results. Correct, George. If I was a local media company, you could do the same deal with your local chamber, right? I mean,
absolutely. There's a demand right now for the folks that are going to look at their geography and look at the technology that they can leverage through a partnership with PandoLogic and do strategic deals. I'm brokering one of those in a town on Cape Cod right now, just because I know the players, and they're able to pull together some non-traditional folks along with a media company to do a job board. So there's tremendous
So,
potential.
but let's just stay on that point. If a local chamber or business association has a newsletter, again, that goes to other executives, that could be a play that a local media company does in conjunction with that association. Correct me if I'm wrong, Terry, that maybe has some archaic, we'll post a job for our members for free on our website. Now you're turning it into a real powerful machine that could make a media company money. George, am I saying that right? This is where you want to be. All right. So thank you. Now, Tara, I'm excited. We're going to keep an eye on this because you're going to be our first incubator of going beyond our partnership. And then we can talk to, we're also sponsoring we're resurrecting, this will come out in a press release, America East. Did you know that? We're taking over the Pennsylvania Newspaper Association along with 360 Media Alliance. We'd like to bring in other associations. So we'll be keeping an eye on that. But now Sean, you've been real quiet. So I want to bring Sean King in. What the heck's going on with you? You have built some really, really interesting stuff, and Pando and you have teamed up together at Veritone. Do I have that right, sir?
Correct. No, we have, and we've been working on quite a bit. As Terry kind of alluded at the kickoff, Veritone's heritage has really been in the media and entertainment and government regulated industries. And we started by creating what is called Aiware, which is basically an operating system for AI that allows kind of the digital transformation within different organizations. Now, most of that is really around taking unstructured data like audio and video files and bringing structure to it, making it searchable, making it binary like text. I think there's a unique opportunity here where you're looking at organizations like in the news space and be able to kind of take what's been created and create, derivative forms of digital content that can increase, the reach, to tap on what you were saying a few minutes ago, Mike, of what they can be. And one of those applications on Aiware is called Marvel.ai. And what Marvel.ai is it's a synthetic voice clone. So it would allow myself to create a clone of my voice that I could have and utilize to create something. So if I was a news reporter and I, wrote my stories for the day, if I wanted to take all those stories and make them into podcasts, to be able to make them to be able to be streamable, be able to increase the opportunity for consumption and reach of the stories that I'm trying to tell. It's a wonderful solution that really kind of empowers organizations to be able to, it could be news stories, it could be training materials, it could be helping through the interviewing process. There are so many different applications of that within an organization. And, we did bring on, one of our clients, Brian Barletta, who is an active user of it. And, he can definitely, talk to, what the power of that is, because, he is much like most of this audience, a publisher.
This is okay. First of all, I was asked on another podcast, someone was interviewing me from another industry about my podcast, because it's the vodcast, which I do. Remember, this is a sponsored webinar. Let's be very clear. The vodcast I do weekly in audio and video is an editorial product. It's not sold. The guests are picked by our editorial team, but it's become huge. I have thousands and thousands and thousands of views and downloads every month. It's built audience for me. And someone asked, he said, how many news publishers are doing podcasts? I said, very few. To my knowledge, voice has not taken off in this industry. Is that a challenge that you see, that an opportunity that people should be doing more of?
I think, yeah, absolutely. The consumption habits have changed drastically for how people are consuming media. And I think if there's anything that's the pandemic really did, is it accelerated the consumption of different types, specifically kind of on-demand audio, on-demand video. So during the pandemic, you saw a huge increase of people going to podcasting, going to YouTube, going to these kind of on-demand things that they're able to listen to on the go. As a ways to be able to consume that. So if you have to think, if you're going to go on and read something, I'm going to sit down. I still get the newspaper at my house. I still like to read the newspaper. But it's an appointment-based decision that I'm making. I'm choosing to sit down in the morning to open up my newspaper, to be able to have my coffee and read. But if I want to be able to continue to do that and maybe go for a walk or but be able to continually consume the media that I'm choosing to, that I'm going to, it's something that people really need to be aggressive about, because the habits are changing of how people are consuming this media. So tools and technology and applications that we can provide and others can take advantage of that can help extend the reach and the changing consumption habits is something everyone really needs to be thinking about as not just other points to meet the customer where they're consuming their media, but these are new points of monetization for some of these legacy groups.
Big time. I'm making money with our podcast, but more so I'm building audience. Now let's bring in Brian. Brian, you are the professional, very popular podcast. First of all, if someone wants to follow you, it's called Sounds Profitable, correct, sir? And it's a podcast on podcasting, right? Do I have that right? It's
it's specifically about advertising, ad tech, and the business side of podcasting.
It's almost like that Seinfeld episode. It's a coffee table book about coffee tables, right? You're actually doing a podcast about this industry. And listen to how good your voice sounds, because you have a real professional microphone. Yours is much better than mine. But I'm consulting a media group. It's under NDA, who found a local news anchor to start doing a daily update on the news, like retired anchor with a lot of, and they were just going to put it on their website. And I pleaded with them to do, if you're going to create the damn product, get it out there. And I turned them onto my platform. I'm not endorsing it. I was turned on to Libsyn. Have you heard of it? Where I put the one MP3 file in there and it shoots out everywhere. I mean, automatically I'm on iHeartRadio and Spotify and Stitcher and sites I've never heard of, and Google and Apple Play. I'm assuming you're telling media companies this is not hard anymore, right? If you can create some content, get it out there. Am I saying that right, sir, Brian?
Yeah, I think the big thing that I like to work on with companies is really the fact that audio is the easiest thing to do. I mean, like, think about it like producing a TV show. You have a table read first. Well, a table read can be a podcast. If you think about it on the entertainment side, having that news anchor, it's someone who knows how to speak, knows how to garner attention. You don't need a video camera. This microphone's neat. It's a USB mic. It's about $200, and there you go. Right. I have a few sound panelings. You can sit in a closet if you need to, and you're good to go. And that content is accessible. You can put it up with an animated image, and now it's a YouTube video. You can make it on demand. You can stream it. You can do so much with it, cut it into clips and everything. And that's really where I think a lot of the future is on that media. And you mentioned that there aren't a lot of these publishers in the audio space, like on the mid to smaller size. And I think it's part of it was they were burned by the video push, right? You know, Facebook and all these other companies said, do this, dig heavy into video. That's a higher production value. Audio is easy. Audio is something you can do with bigger projects. And that's why I'm so bullish on it. And I think the big thing, and one of the reasons why I'm so excited to be working with Sean and team, is that like audio creates jobs that you didn't think about. It creates new opportunities. It creates new reach. I barely speak English. And now thanks to like working with Marvel AI, like they took my audio, they made a synthetic version of my voice. Let's say I unfortunately get sick, and my editor can take one of my articles and have the synthetic tool.
All right, I'm going to do it now.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've got this natural sound voice cloning. Am I saying that correct here, Sean? I mean, is that the product that I want to play right now? The natural? You told me, Sean, that if I didn't want to do my podcast live, that I could type it on my computer as I'm flying to Hawaii, and you can recreate it for me. You have AI that will match my voice now, and people will think it's really me. That's why I was joking with you before that I'm actually not here right now. I'm actually in animation. So should I play this clip of Brian you gave me first right now, the natural sound?
So one of which that we did for this demo purposes, and kind of what Brian was talking about before, is yes, we can create a synthetic clone of your voice that is with only done and created with your consent to be able to do so. And yes, we can absolutely
thank you for that.
take written articles and you can create it in your voice to read out. But the other thing that I think is even more exciting is not even to be able to do that, but be able to have it reach into audiences that you cannot reach to currently. So for example, Brian, the Spanish market, a Latinx market in the United States is growing like crazy. It's huge. And right now, Brian cannot communicate or reach to them under his normal everyday, like you said, he barely speaks English, Spanish. But here in this opportunity, we can take his voice and we can have his natural sounding voice and have him give the exact same podcast, but speak in his voice, Spanish.
So let's do it. Okay. So this is a synthetic, in other words, again, we're talking to news publishers now, people who run news operations. Again, okay, I keep in front of me, I always have this 3 bullets of who we appeal to. A news publisher is someone who has to generate journalistic content. That costs money. That is hard. You want real journalists. You got to find an audience for it and you got to monetize it. That's a news publisher. That's who we appeal to. So the guy who now says, I can't afford it, I can't pay a real voice, the guy in my newsroom's got a lisp. You can create a synthetic voice cost effectively of the content they're already creating. Do I have that correct? So this is a synthetic voice using Brian's, but you could do another voice. So here we go. Brian, keep your mouth shut, Brian, because here it comes. Let's see, play it.
Who doesn't love streaming? The idea of the media being fed to the consumer in real time, allowing the technology provider to interact with them at their time of consumption. In our world of podcasting, regardless of how great our data is compared to terrestrial radio, television, out of home, and even social media influencer marketing, download is treated like a dirty word.
Okay, you didn't speak that. That was typewritten words, correct?
Correct.
Okay, now you translated.
Real quick on that. What's really neat about that is that that's an opportunity. Their tool does so much of that on its own, but it's an opportunity for a new level of editor, right? There's so much fear of replacing people with these automation tools, but now there's a new skill of editor. Just like someone plays an instrument or someone fine tunes, edits specific things, there's going to be a new skill set about taking my voice and adding the right inflection, making sure the words and the sentences sound like me, because they have all the tones and the pitches, but sometimes the sentence it's going to need a little bit of extra love to it.
All right. So then let's do it in Spanish now. You ready? Now this again, you didn't speak this in Spanish, right?
I could not. If you wrote it out for me, I couldn't even come close to it.
All right, here we go.
Anchor recibe muchas críticas de los expertos en podcasts que han etiquetado a Anchor como un patio de recreo para personas menos serias que, bueno, que están jugando con podcastings. Pero Spotify no compró Anchor porque es un lugar divertido para jugar en podcasting. Vieron un caso de negocios. Un caso de negocios que extiende.
That's amazing. That is your voice. And this was written first. Again, so this is what scares me, in my humble opinion. If you're not adapting to this as a news publisher, and with all the different new startups that are happening in markets now, if someone else were to come into a market and launch these kinds of programs, they could be stealing your audience. So how expensive is it to do this, Sean? I mean, if you wanted to start building a voice-based news delivery platform.
Yeah, it's very cost effective to be able to do that. I mean, Brian can speak. It speaks to and works within that. I mean, depends on the use case and consumption. We have a lot of variable pricing that works to all levels of businesses to make this work. But really, how people need to look at this is, this is opportunity. This is not just opportunity. This is revenue opportunity. This is new listenership opportunity. And more importantly, most of these organizations are sitting on decades of stories. I mean, how many times do we see the same movie being made again and again and again and again? People love to hear the marquee stories, and especially being able to personalize and localize it down to Miami or big stories in Dallas or Tupelo, Mississippi. There are marquee stories that kind of tell, a very personal story about living in those environments, and being able to take these stories and retell them in a new format is just, you're creating these great opportunities, and these opportunities will create more jobs.
And here's the funny thing. I was scared of this when it was first brought to me at ENP. You got to do more voice. There was a guy named Jeremy Mims. I think we've all heard of him. He's out there. He was a voice advocate in our industry for years. And he said, Mike, you don't get it. He showed me charts that how quickly we adapted to radio first, and then we adapted to television as a culture. Then we adapted to the internet. Voice was like, wow, instant. Everybody was now, because correct me if I'm wrong, when I ask this a question, that's voice. In other words, and my podcast now is available on this because to any publisher, again, I want to address this to Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, to any publisher who thinks it's hard to distribute this content, it's easy. All you need is the MP3 file, correct? Once you create that one simple file, there are platforms, like I said, I use Libsyn because it only costs me like $200 a month. that automatically makes it available for Siri. And am I saying this right, Brian? It's not hard for a publisher to do this.
I mean, look, if you're a publisher and you're creating text content, then using a tool like Marvel AI allows you to do it immediately in any of the voices that they already have. You can get it in any language you want, down to specific dialects, and you can have that up on, like, I'll be very clear with you. The pricing of it is cheaper than some of the tools that I use for content creation on a month-to-month basis, and will provide me more content accessibility options. And so being able to take that MP3, work with a hosting platform, many of them also offer free options.
Of course.
You
I had
can take your content and immediately get it out there. And it's not a problem to migrate your podcast at a certain point to something with better ad capabilities, whether they sell it for you or give you those opportunities.
Well, I get pitched all the time from companies now because they see me out there. They want me to migrate to them now. They promise me advertising revenue. No, this is and it's simple. All I need is the damn MP3 file.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, what's really cool is, and I get to talk to Sean about this all the time. I'll get messages from people being like, I love your content. I'm in France. My audience mostly speaks French. And I'm just like, let's figure it out. Like, that's just the answer, right? Like, it's a doable solution. I don't have to go find someone who can speak English and French and understands my subject matter. I don't have to go pay them separately and test them out on that. I don't have to have them create unique French content yet. I get to dip my toe in there, and then the person says, this is another path. Let's expand here together. And then I can explore that.
Of course.
But we're talking like the matter of weeks, we can be up and running in a brand new language with a brand new voice. And that's what's exciting me. Sounds Profitable is just me. I have some contractors on it, but I'm creating everything I can. And now I have about 50 people listening to the Spanish feed. My total podcast listenership is about 350 to 500 per episode. 50 people listening to every Spanish episode. For me and my business, my one-to-one aspect, every one of those people count for me.
They have to.
Is a new communication.
It's a whole new field. And again, let me say to every publisher or every newsroom executive that's on this webinar, these platforms you use take care of everything. I didn't know that Apple changed its name 3 times since I started. You're not an Apple Play now, you're here. I mean, or Google changed it. You see what don't worry about that. You don't have to be on the cutting edge. You create the content, and the distribution now is it's so easy. But let's go back now to George, if I may be so bold, and Terry, because you've been ignored for a while. We talked about AI. There's a lot of stuff, incidentally, going on in the chat room right now. Please, your questions are getting answered. We really appreciate your feedback in there. I see it's getting busier and busier. We started this whole dialogue off about a vertical called recruitment. We just had a conversation down here with with Sean and Brian that had nothing to do with recruitment in a way. Can you square this circle for me, Terry? Where is the recruitment angle in all this AI, and why is this important?
Yeah, one of the big voids in recruitment today is the so-called black hole. When candidates try to apply to a job, they have to go through this lengthy process. So what we've done is created conversational AI for candidate engagement. And so it's a bi-directional conversation. What you just heard from Brian and Sean is the ability to automate one side of that conversation. Conversational AI makes it bi-directional. So a candidate can apply to a job and they can receive on their phone via SMS a conversation, and that conversation is contextual about that job, about that company, about the motivation that candidate might have as to why they want to work for a particular company. And this conversation does 2 things. One, it gets the candidate motivated to complete the application and provide data so that the employer gets a rich amount of information. And it helps the employer qualify the candidate. Does this person really want to work for the company? And what kind of data did they give me to validate their motivation and their capabilities beyond the credentials that you might get with a resume, right? So Sean mentioned being able to take his content on the road, wherever he wants to go, consume that content. Conversational AI allows candidates to do that on their mobile phone when they apply to jobs. So
I'm finding this fascinating. George, will we be adapting that into the job board as well? Is that your plan? Are we going to be?
Yes. So Terry has an account manager for us that is basically integrating new technologies that Pando brings in. And so we are, it's relatively recent that Pando became part of Veritone, but I'm very excited for what 2022 holds for these new tools to layer in this AI component and add more of that to media job boards. So it's really exciting stuff.
And again, Terry, would that make me a differentiator if I was a local media company because remember, you're peddling this now to there's a lot of business with sophisticated HR people. And correct me if I'm wrong, George, when you and I did the pricing in the market, I asked you to give us a lower price than competition so we could serve the industry and make it cost effective. Terry, if I'm out there as a media company and I'm trying to get this out there, how would I pitch the HR person? Will they get it, or is it too geeky and technical for them? Was this a simple play?
I think they'll get it, because the difficulty they have is converting the candidates that they reach, right? Because candidates a lot of times get redirected to the employer, and every employer has their own custom application process, otherwise known as the black hole, where candidates don't want to go, right? It's you fill out forms and you have to upload your resume and you have to answer questions. A conversational AI makes it conversational for the candidate. And it's contextual. It's not a bot. It's not a chat bot, in that it's not just, canned questions. It's conversation. And if the candidate wants to know, why are you a good employer to work for, they can ask those questions and get answers. And those answers can be rich media that are being provided to the candidate. The end result is that it increases the application conversion rate, the people that actually finish their application. Because
it's a seller's market right now. I mean, in other words, you as a candidate are being very picky about who you're going to work for. The employer has to put his best foot forward, right? And
you got to make it simple and easy.
You're the one, George, that was telling me when we were working with getting that senior sales executive, which was really hard. It took us 3 months for the media company I'm working with down here in Florida. You're the one that said they should produce a video about why it's great to live there. You kept trying to tell me you got to sell, right, George?
Yeah, I mean, if you have a tagline, sales job in paradise, let's hone in on the paradise factor.
That was the line I wrote, because people want to live down here now. Cost of living is cheap. The weather's good. It's the other side of the state. I live in Tampa. It's over there, in the what they call the Treasure Coast. It's just a great place to live. Yeah, and it worked. I know we're also doing something right now for Bay Area News Group, right? We're externalizing those job listings. We're putting them out there. This is working, but you got to sell. I mean, and you're saying Pando can give that employer that edge. And is this hard for the media company to get the employer up and running on this, Terry, or is this simple?
Not at all. And you can, in fact, even choose the voice. Now when you add Marvel AI to our conversational AI, we could make the voice of that company be Mike Blender. How fun would that be, right? or Mike about why it should work at E&P, right? So you can use personality to make it a fun, engaging conversation for people, and that has the ability to increase the conversion rate for applicants.
Okay, so let's bring this home. We only have about 5 minutes left. Again, chat room, please. Any questions? You want any more information? We got people in there that are interacting right now. I can't keep my eye on it, but it's being answered. So let's bring this all home. Local media company wants to get more revenue from recruitment. That's what this is all about right now. We're up, about 10,000% right now, George. We're doing very well.
We started off at nothing. We had dwindled to nothing, and it was a really big pivot point with the decision to launch this vertical. And, obviously, given the state of things with the pandemic, a little bit of a rocky liftoff, but we're tracking really well now to scale up this year.
Oh, we're doing really well. I mean, to the point where it's become in my top 8 revenue line items, which is excellent. I know, and not that it's all about the money, but yeah, I'm not a communist, as I said before. So let's talk about the local media company. Terry, if a local media company now wants to get back in the game, in this vertical, in this area of recruitment, they got to first accept the fact that the recruiter's not an idiot, right? Those HR people, they are smart and they know the black hole. I've heard this. I don't care about quantity. I want quality. I've heard that too, right? I mean, they want qualified, easy leads, but the media company, correct me if I'm wrong, has an advantage. They can externalize those ads. That's the word I used earlier, which we do here at E&P, to the passive job seeker. Take that in instantly as your differentiator to get them off Indeed, right? Or LinkedIn or whatever they're currently doing. Am I saying that right, Terry?
Yeah, we put their jobs across the internet where it's going to interact with both passive and active job seekers. They click on that apply button. Then the question is, what happens? Do they have a conversation that enables them to uniquely personalize their application, or do they get dropped into some black hole? That's where the value add comes in, the ability to customize that application process, conversationalize it for the employer.
And that's simple, because a simple RSS feed can kick out jobs, and they can put different jobs in different places, right? They could put jobs for executives on their business news. They could put jobs for other, you could slice and dice them any way you want to, right? And put them out there. Then the second differentiator, and I'm going to bring it all home now, would be this new AI. I mean, because now the media company can say to the HR manager, relax, I'm actually not only going to help you externalize these jobs and pick up passive job seekers because you're really trying to find talent, but I'm going to make you look better than the competition. And that can be easy to deploy as well, sir?
Absolutely.
How hard is it to train up a sales team to take this to market? I mean, let's be very clear right now. What does it take? I mean, George has got a lot of skills. He's representing my company, but he's been doing it for decades. Is this hard to get someone trained up to go into these HR managers and truly build revenue like we have?
No, it's not hard at all, because one, programmatic gives you the value prop that you are reaching the broadest audience possible, and it's all automated. So they don't have to do any work, right? And then the contextual conversation, the same thing, out of the box conversation targeted to the job listing that can be.
Oh, I'm losing you. Hello, sir. Oh my God, the internet, isn't this? Okay, you're back, Terry. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Right. Yeah, so
Terry, you're freezing up on me. Damn it. But you're back again. Try it one more time, Terry.
Yeah, I'm just trying to convey how easy it is.
It's easy to start this sales effort. George, you've trained hundreds and hundreds of reps like I have over the years. That was your function at media companies. You had to dummy it down and de-geek the internet for traditional sales teams. A lot of media companies now treat recruitment as an inside play. What advice would you give to them as a sales professional if they wanted to get into this space today, George? How would you bring this home?
To recognize that it's no longer the same in terms of the strategy, the vertical, it's really creating a gateway. It's more of a partnership play to affiliate with a vendor like Pando that provides the ability to do those basics. Displaying the jobs is really a basic, and that can be displayed, as we discussed, via externalizing the RSS feeds. But the most important thing is for media companies to recognize that they can be in this space and provision the jobs and compete with others that are doing that. And it's not that difficult. They just have to have the determination to realize that this is business that's being left on the table. It can be captured. It's more of a plug and play solution than it ever was. And I would encourage everybody to take a look. There's revenue and new audience to be had.
All right. So with that being said, again, if anyone has more interest, do they go just to the PandoLogic site, Veritone? Those are our two URLs. Do I have that right for everyone here? Terry?
Yeah, the chat session has links. Elaine has been kind enough to post links to where to follow up.
All right, so please go into the chat room and find more information. I'm fascinated by this, and I want to thank our panel. This is just the beginning. I have a feeling for a year from now, I'm going to be finding Brian. You're going to be doing stuff that's really crazy, where you're going to be thinking your content, and it will automatically be done in Swedish. Am I correct, sir? I mean, that's where it's going from some way. But I'm going to start following your podcast, Brian. And how would I learn more about your podcast if I want to follow it, sir?
Yeah, absolutely. Soundsprofitable.com will have the newsletter, the podcast, and all my content.
George, I know you want to make money. If any if any media company out there wants to learn more about posting their jobs, we're not the customer here. It's Pando and Veritone. George, where do they go to post a job opening right now?
Yeah, it's mediajobboard.com/employers. We've made it really simple. There's 3 packages. Everything is explained. I'm at george@editorandpublisher.com, and I'm happy to discuss the talent acquisition strategies at your media outlet.
Thank you to this amazing panel. You guys are great. The chat room will stay up for a bit. Elena in the background there has been working her tail off, putting links in there. Terry, thank you. Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Brian. And I want to thank our friends at NEPA. We're going to keep an eye on what's going on up there, because I think this is real exciting stuff, Tara, about how we're broadening it into the other associations. Everyone have a great day. This has been a great broadcast. Thanks so much.
Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.